The great hall had been built to swallow men whole. Its vaulted ceiling arched above banners and braziers, above the thick smoke of roast boar and burning tallow, above the music that had tried so hard to sound like joy. The Red Keep stones knew 1,000 feasts, and none of them had ever been innocent. When the king began to cough, the sound at first was swallowed by laughter. Joffrey had been toying with his uncle, after all, performing cruelty as if it were wit. The court had learned to laugh along, because laughter was safer than silence. Then Joffrey's face changed. It was not a pretty change. It was the clumsy transformation of a boy into a thing that could die. His lips pulled back from his teeth. His eyes went round and wet, and the air around him seemed to thicken as he tried to breathe through it. Fingers. Those same fingers that had once pointed so eagerly at headsman's blocks, clawed at his throat, digging into skin with mindless desperation. Sansa's first thought was stupid and simple. Not again. Not another king. Not another hall full of shouting. Not another sudden, senseless pivot of fate that left her standing in the wreckage with blood on someone else's hands. She felt Petyr near her before she saw him. He had a way of occupying space without drawing it, like a shadow that chose its own shape. His smile was gentle, polite, entirely wrong for the moment. He did not rush forward. He did not cry out. He did not look away. He watched. Across the table, Margaery's beauty faltered into something raw. She reached for her husband, her king, half rising, her jeweled sleeves catching torchlight, and Joffrey struck at her weakly, as if even dying he resented being touched. Cersei was already on her feet. Her scream ripped through the hall, a sound with claws. "Help him! Help my son!" A dozen people surged forward at once, maesters, guards, lords eager to be seen being loyal. In that surge, Tyrion was shoved, hard enough that red wine slopped across his hand and onto the white cloth like fresh blood. Someone shouted his name. Accusation, not concern. A goblet rolled, rang against stone and shattered. Sansa tasted bile. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She didn't move, because if she moved, someone might notice. If someone noticed, they might remember that she had once been betrothed to Joffrey, that he had once promised to make her watch her brother's head mounted on spikes. They might remember that she was a Stark, and in King's Landing a Stark was always convenient to blame. Petyr's voice reached her without seeming to cross the space between them. "Breathe," he murmured, so softly it might have been the rustle of silk. "Just breathe." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the smallest thing. The way his gaze flicked, quick as a snake's tongue, to Olenna Tyrell. The old woman sat as if carved from bone, hands folded neatly in her lap. The chaos did not touch her. If anything, she looked bored by it, as if death were merely another poorly planned entertainment. Sansa's skin went cold. She remembered a hairnet, silver and black, stones that caught candlelight like tiny trapped stars. She remembered a drunk knight's trembling hands pressing it into hers, whispering that it would keep her safe. "Keep it close," he'd said. "Keep it secret." Joffrey toppled sideways, his crown slipping, one rubied point scraping across his forehead. Foam gathered at his lips. Margaery screamed then, not for court, not as performance, but from somewhere deep and frightened. Cersei shoved people aside with a queen's fury, kneeling to cradle her son's head as if she could bully death itself into retreat. The hall became noise. The noise became accusation. "Poison!" someone cried. "Poison!" Who poured the wine? Who served the pie? Tyrion stood very still, and that stillness was read as guilt by those who needed it to be. Eyes turned like blades. In a corner, Varys' face was a mask of mild astonishment, but his gaze was already moving, taking notes of every flinch and every whispered word. Sansa felt Petyr's hand brush her elbow, an almost careless touch, but it guided her, angled her body away from the thickest of the crowd. He didn't tug. He didn't command. He merely placed himself so that the flow of panicked courtiers carried her, gently, toward the edge of the hall. She should have resisted. She should have held to something. Honor, sense, fear. But the truth was that fear had long ago become the language she understood best, and Petyr spoke it fluently. There was a moment when Joffrey's eyes found hers. He was dying, and in his dying he looked like every boy he had ever been, not the monster in golden clothes. His mouth opened, trying to shape a word, and for an instant Sansa wondered if he would say her name. He didn't. He only gagged, a sound like a broken bellows, and then his gaze slid away, unfocused, drowning. That was when the room truly believed it. The king was dying. The king might already be dead. And in that belief, the court shattered into 100 separate hungers. To be first to Cersei's side, to be farthest from blame, to be loudest in grief, to be sharpest in accusation. Petyr leaned close enough that she caught the faint scent of mint on his breath. "Now," he whispered. And it was not at a suggestion. Sansa did not see the exit, not at first. She only felt it. The way the noise thinned, the way the crush of bodies eased. A singer stumbled, clutching his lute as if it were a shield. Guards pushed back, but the push was clumsy, desperate. Somewhere behind her, Tyrion's voice rose, sharp with outrage and disbelief. "I didn't do it." No one listened. Sansa's steps were small. She kept her hands close to her body, fingers curled into her palms. A lifetime ago she had believed that queens walked like swans. Tonight she walked like a mouse. At the far end of the hall, a door opened. A serving girl slipped through, face pale. The seam of opportunity appeared like a tear in cloth. Petyr's smile never changed, but his eyes did. In them there was something bright, something hungry, something that reminded her of the way falcons watched rabbits in winter fields. A war had been burning across the realm for years, and still the court had pretended the king's wedding could be pure pageantry. As if gold could buy a moment untouched by blood. As if songs could drown out screams. Sansa crossed the threshold into a corridor dim with torchlight, and the roar of the hall dulled behind her like a door closing on a storm. Petyr followed without haste, as if he had all the time in the world. And behind them, in the great hall that swallowed men whole, the crown began to fall. They fled the Red Keep like thieves, which was fitting. The corridors behind the great hall were narrower, older, built for servants who had learned to keep their heads down and their mouths shut. Torchlight threw long shadows that made every turn look like a trap. Sir Dontos Hollard reeled ahead of her, half running, half stumbling, his breath sour with wine and panic. The bells on his fool's cap, he'd worn it earlier, for the king's amusement, had been ripped away. Without them, he looked more naked than any man Sansa had ever seen. "Quickly! Quickly!" he hissed, as if speed alone could outrun accusation. "They'll say it was you, my lady. They'll say it was you and the dwarf. Gods, gods, why did you wear it? Why did you wear it?" "Because you told me to," Sansa said, the words coming out harsher than she intended. Her throat felt scraped raw. Her heart battered her ribs like it wanted out. Dontos flinched as if struck. "It's for your good. For your good. I swore to him. I swore. Him. Always him. Littlefinger," whispered in taverns and bedchambers, spoken with a laugh and a shiver. The man who had smiled at her in court, who had offered small kindnesses with hands that never seemed entirely clean. The man who had looked at her like a piece on a board had been arranging since before she could read. They descended a stairwell that smelled of damp stone and old cabbage. A rat darted across their path and vanished into darkness. Sansa's shoes, delicate things meant for a wedding, slipped on wet steps. A door opened, and cold air slapped her face. They were outside, in the belly of King's Landing, where the Red Keep's pride gave way to stinking alleys and hard-packed mud. The night pressed close. Lanterns swung on hooks above shuttered doors. The city felt like it was holding its breath. Dontos dragged her forward, down toward the river. The black water was a band of darkness edged with moonlight, its surface rippling with the lazy menace of tides. From far behind them came the faint roar of the castle. Shouts, bells, the frantic blare of alarms spreading through stone like fire through dry grass. At the docks, a small boat waited, black sails furled. A single lantern burned, hooded so its light did not carry far. A figure stood at the water's edge, hands clasped behind his back, coat stirring in the wind as if it had a life of its own. Petyr. He did not rush to greet her. He let them come to him as if their approach were inevitable. In the lantern's thin glow, his face looked younger, almost handsome. His mocking smile softened into something close to warm. "Lady Sansa," he said gently, like a man greeting an old friend at a pleasant supper instead of a girl running from a dead king. Dantos shoved her forward. "I did it," he blurted, desperate for praise. "I brought her. You said, your gold, my castle." Petyr's eyes slid to him, and something in that gaze made Sansa's skin prickle. It was not hatred. Hatred required attention. This was the way a man looked at a tool he no longer needed. "You've done well," Petyr said. Dantos sagged with relief. And now you'll be paid," Petyr finished. He lifted a hand. It was a small motion, nothing dramatic. In response, shadows detached themselves from the darkness. Men in hoods, boots silent on wet wood. Boughs rose. Strings creaked. Sansa's mind refused to understand for a heartbeat. She stared, stupidly, at the curve of a drawn bow, at the pale triangle of an arrowhead catching lantern light. Dantos made a confused sound. "No," he said, the word thin as paper. "No, you said..." The arrows struck him with brutal efficiency. 1, 2, 3, thudding into meat, snapping him backward. He made a wet choking sound, not unlike the one Joffrey had made, and toppled to the dock. His hands scrabbled at the planks, fingers leaving little dark smears. Sansa's scream tried to climb out of her, but fear strangled it. Her body went rigid. Her eyes locked on Dantos as he twitched, then stilled, his mouth working soundlessly once, twice, as if still trying to bargain. Petyr stepped closer to her, and the wind fluttered her hair against her cheeks. "Hush," he said softly, and there was no malice in it. "It's done." "Why?" The word came out as a rasp. Petyr looked down at Dantos' body with mild distaste, like a man noticing mud on his boots. "Because he was a drunk," he said, as if that were explanation enough. "Because he was sentimental. Because he might have sold you for a cup of wine by morning." He turned his attention back to her, eyes bright, voice gentle. "Because you're worth more than that." Sansa's fingers curled around the edge of her sleeve until the fabric creaked. "Worth what?" Petyr smiled. "Everything." He offered his hand. Not as a lord might offer to a lady, all ceremony and distance, but as a man inviting a child across a puddle. She looked at his hand and saw that it was steady. The world around her was unraveling, and he was steady. That steadiness was its own kind of trap. Behind them, the city's alarm grew louder. Somewhere, men would be running for the gates. Somewhere, Cersei would be pointing a trembling finger, and the finger would find someone to blame. Petyr guided her onto the boat. The deck shifted under her feet. The smell of tar and salt rose around them. His men moved with practiced speed, pushing off, drawing the sail, turning them away from the lights of the docks and into the darker safety of open water. Sansa stood near the rail, staring back at King's Landing. The Red Keep loomed above the city like a crouched beast, its windows glittering with torches. It had once been the place she dreamed of. Now it was the place she fled. Petyr joined her at the rail, close enough that she could hear his breath, feel the warmth of him against the cold night. "You did well," he said, as if she had accomplished something by surviving. "You kept your head. That is rare in a girl your age." She swallowed. The river air tasted of smoke and rot. "They'll hunt me." "Yes," Petyr said easily, as if discussing weather. "They'll hunt you like a fox. They'll send hounds and riders and ravens. They'll invent reasons if they can't find real ones. Bah. And you?" she asked. "Will you hide me?" Petyr's smile sharpened. "I will make you disappear." The boat cut through black water. The lantern's light trembled with each wave. Sansa watched the city shrink, watched the red glow fade, and felt something inside her. Some fragile part that had clung to the idea of safety snap cleanly. Petyr rested his hands on the rail, knuckles pale, gaze fixed on the dark horizon. "Do you know what people see when they look at the Iron Throne?" he asked, almost conversational. Sansa's laugh came out broken. "1,000 swords." Petyr's eyes gleamed. "Most see swords, some see power. A few see the lie underneath." He turned, and his voice dropped to something intimate. "It isn't the throne that rules, it's what men believe about it." She stared at him. In the lantern light, his face was all angles and shadows. "And what do you believe?" Petyr's smile was small and sincere in the way a knife might be sincere. "I believe," he said, "that the realm is an empty cup, and the one who pours the wine decides who chokes." The sails snapped. The boat leaned. The city fell behind them, and ahead the night opened like a mouth. Dawn in the fingers did not come with gentleness. It seeped into the world like cold water, turning the sky from black to bruised purple to a sickly gray. The sea was restless, slapping the stony shore with the patience of something that would never tire. When the boat scraped against rock, the sound made Sansa flinch, as if it were the clang of a prison gate. Petyr stepped off first, boots finding purchase on slick stones. He reached back for her without looking, hands steady, expecting her to take it. She did. Her fingers were numb from the night wind, but his palm was warm. His little keep, his birthplace, he had told her once with a faint laugh, sat above the shore like an afterthought. It was not Winterfell. It was not the Red Keep. It was stone and salt and stubbornness. A few towers, a low wall, banners snapped by wind hard enough to make the cloth scream. Servants waited with lanterns and cloaks. They bowed low, eyes flicking to her face and away again, careful not to stare. Petyr's men moved with quiet competence, unloading bundles and chests, dragging the gangplank into place. Inside the courtyard, mud sucked at her shoes. The air smelled of wet dog and seaweed. A thin rain began to fall, more mist than drops, but it clung to eyelashes and dampened hair. Petyr shrugged off his cloak and handed it to a servant. He looked entirely at ease, as if fleeing a poisoned king in a city full of hunters were merely an unpleasant journey home. Sansa's stomach twisted. What happens now? Petyr glanced at her, and for a moment she saw the faintest trace of real fatigue. Not regret, not fear. Fatigue, like a man who had been carrying a heavy secret for too long and was pleased to finally set it down. "Now," he said, "we change your name." Her mouth went dry. Names had always seemed like armor when she was a child. Stark, Dottie, Tully. A girl in Winterfell who could trace her family back through stories and songs. In King's Landing, names were chains. Petyr led her inside. The hall was small, hung with faded tapestries that showed waves and gulls rather than wolves and stags. A fire burned, crackling, throwing light that made everything seem warmer than it was. He poured wine into 2 cups with the casual familiarity of a man who knew where everything was. He offered one to her. Sansa did not take it. Petyr's eyebrows rose. "Still afraid of poison?" Sansa's hands clenched. "Shouldn't I be?" Petyr's smile softened, almost kind. "Caution is wise, panic is not." He set her cup on the table untouched. "Drink later if you like, or not at all. You'll find that control is easier when your head is clear." He took a sip from his own cup and watched her over the rim. "From this moment," he said, "you are not Sansa Stark." Her chest tightened. She wanted to protest. She wanted to cling to that name like a last scrap of cloth in a storm. But she pictured Cersei's face, twisted with grief and fury, and she pictured what grief and fury could buy in King's Landing. She pictured chains. She pictured heads on spikes. "What am I then?" she asked, and her voice sounded too small in the hall. Petyr leaned forward slightly. "You are Elaine," he said, and there was a deliberate tenderness in the way he spoke it, as if he were offering her a new skin. "Elaine Stone, my natural daughter." Sansa stared. "You're... my bastard." He shrugged as if it were nothing, as if the insult of bastardry did not carry weight. "It's a believable lie. Men will see what they want to see. A pretty girl with a lord's nose and a shy manner? They'll nod and congratulate themselves for noticing the resemblance." "No, I don't have your nose," she said reflexively. Petyr's laugh was quiet. "No," he agreed, eyes gleaming. "You have Catelyn's." The name hit her like a slap, not because she hadn't heard it in years, but because it always came with him. Like a ghost, he refused to let rest. Her mother's face flashed in her mind. Warm hands, the scent of clean linen, a voice that could soothe even the worst fears. Dead now. All of them dead, except her, and her name was part of why. Petyr watched the reaction play across her face with a strategist's patience. "Elaine," he repeated gently, as if training her tongue. "Say it." Sansa swallowed. The taste of salt was still on her lips from the night wind. "Elaine," she said. Petyr nodded, satisfied. "Good. Good." A servant brought food, hard bread, cheese, a thin stew that smelled of onions. Sansa realized she was starving only when her stomach cramped. She ate with fingers that shook, forcing the food down as if it might anchor her. Petyr spoke while she ate, his voice calm, explaining the lie as if explaining a lesson in sums. "You will speak little," he said. "You will smile when greeted. You will curtsy. You will let men underestimate you. It is one of the safest cloaks a woman can wear." "What about you?" Sansa asked. "They'll suspect you. You were master of coin. You were close to the court." Petyr lifted a shoulder. "They can suspect me all they like. Suspicion is not proof." He tapped his fingers on the table, thoughtful. "Besides, I have already left King's Landing with the crown's blessing. I went to treat with the Vale. I am a loyal servant of the realm." "And tell me." His eyes flicked to her hair, to the dark stones woven into the net still braided there. "That," he said softly, "was not loyalty. That was necessity." Sansa's hand rose to her braid. The net felt heavier than it had at the feast. "It was you," she whispered, though she had known in her bones since the hall. Petyr did not deny it. He did not confirm it outright either. He only watched her, waiting for her to understand the kind of world she now lived in. "The king was a monster," she said, and the words tasted strange. She had prayed for Joffrey's death in silent, shameful corners. Now that it had come, she did not know what to do with the wish fulfilled. Petyr's smile was faint. "Monsters die all the time," he said. "That isn't what matters." "What matters?" she asked. Petyr set down his cup. His gaze sharpened, the warmth peeling away to reveal the cold intelligence beneath. "What matters," he said, "is who gets to write the story afterward." Outside, the wind moaned against stone. A raven cried, harsh and lonely. Sansa watched Petyr's face and felt, with a sick certainty, that she had stepped onto a board where every piece moved by someone else's hand. And yet, beneath the fear, another feeling stirred, unfamiliar and dangerous. Curiosity. If the story could be written, then perhaps it could be rewritten. Perhaps a girl could learn the ink. Petyr leaned back, satisfied with whatever he saw in her eyes. "E8," he said, gentle again. "We leave for the Eyrie tomorrow. My lady, Elaine, will meet her aunt." Sansa's spoon paused midair. "Lady Arryn." Petyr's smile widened, and for a heartbeat it looked like triumph. "Yes," he said. "Lysa." Looked tall. The Eyrie was a castle built for gods and madmen. It perched on the mountain like a pale bird's nest, all white stone and sheer drops. The path up was narrow enough to make Sansa's stomach lurch with every step of the mule, and when they finally passed through the bloody gate and climbed the last steep ascent, she felt as if she had left the world behind. Clouds drifted below the castle walls, thick as milk. The air was so thin, it tasted clean and sharp, like it could cut. Petyr moved through the area as if it belonged to him already. He greeted guards by name. He nodded to servants with the confidence of a man accustomed to being obeyed. The lords and ladies of the Vale watched him with cautious curiosity, their faces hard with mountain weather and old pride. And then Lysa Arryn swept into the hall like a storm in silk. She was smaller than Sansa expected, all sharp elbows and trembling intensity. Her hair a tangled auburn halo around a face that might once have been pretty. Her eyes were fever bright. She wore sky blue as if trying to match the endless open air outside, but the color did not soften her. It made her look more desperate, like a scrap of summer clinging to winter. "Petyr!" Lysa cried, and the sound cracked like a whip. Before Sansa could blink, Lysa was on him, hands grabbing his cheeks, pulling his face down to hers. She kissed him with the frantic hunger of a woman drowning. Petyr let it happen. His hands rested lightly on her waist, not pushing away, not pulling close, holding her at the exact distance he chose. Sansa stood frozen, her cheeks burning. She had seen men kiss women at court, but never like this. This was not performance. This was need. When Lysa finally pulled back, panting, her gaze snapped to Sansa. For a heartbeat, Sansa saw her aunt's expression sharpen into suspicion, the way a knife's edge appears beneath cloth. "And who is this?" Lysa demanded. Petyr's voice was mild. "Elaine," he said. "My daughter." The lie sat in the air between them, heavy and absurd. Lysa stared at Sansa's face as if trying to peel it open with her eyes. Sansa lowered her gaze, forcing herself into a curtsy she had practiced in the fingers until her knees ached. "My lady," she said softly, careful to keep her voice plain. Lysa's nostrils flared. "Your daughter," she repeated as if tasting poison. "You never told me you had a daughter." Petyr smiled, a small apologetic curve of lips. "There was never a need," he said. "Until now." Lysa's gaze slid back to him, and her suspicion melted into possessive relief. She clutched his arm as if afraid he might vanish. "You're here," she breathed. "You promised you would come. You promised." "I keep my promises," Petyr said. He said it like a prayer, like a truth. Sansa watched him and wondered how many promises he kept by twisting them into shapes no one recognized. The hall's windows stood open to the sky. Wind wandered through, stirring candle flames and making banners ripple. Somewhere, a falcon cried. Lysa guided them through the Eyrie as if showing off a jewel she'd kept locked away. She chattered about the mountain clans, about the bloody gate, about the way the Vale had stayed untouched by war. Her voice swung between giddy and brittle. She laughed too loudly, then fell silent too quickly. Robin appeared at a doorway like a pale ghost. He was a boy, thin and sickly, his hair dark and his eyes watery. He clung to Lysa's skirts with the stubbornness of a child who had never been told no. "This is my son," Lysa announced proudly. "Lord of the Eyrie, Lord of the Vale, sweet Robin." Robin's gaze landed on Petyr, and for a moment his face tightened with something like jealousy. Then his eyes found Sansa, Elaine, and his expression softened into childish curiosity. "Is she yours?" Robin asked bluntly. Sansa's throat closed. Petyr answered smoothly, "Yes." Robin nodded, satisfied, then yawned, rubbed his nose, and leaned harder into his mother. Lysa stroked his hair, murmuring nonsense comforts. Sansa stood very still. The Eyrie's marble floors gleamed beneath her feet. The open sky beyond the windows was so vast it made her dizzy. Somewhere far below, a hawk circled above cloud. That night, in the chamber they gave her, Sansa, Elaine, stood at the window and stared down into the sea of white. She could not see the ground. She could not see the road. only clouds and the occasional dark shape of a bird. It felt like living in a dream where falling was always one step away. A soft knock came at her door. Before she could answer, Petyr slipped inside. He closed the door gently behind him. He looked tired now, the lines at the corners of his eyes deeper in the candlelight. He poured wine into a cup without asking, then held it out. This time Sansa took it, if only to have something to do with her hands. "She believes you," Sansa said quietly. "About me." Petyr's smile was faint. "Lysa believes what she needs to believe," he said. "It's one of her many gifts." Sansa's fingers tightened around the cup. "She wants you," she said, and the bluntness surprised her. Petyr's gaze flicked to her, sharp. Then he laughed softly, as if amused by her innocence. "Yes," he said. "She has wanted me for a long time. And you will..." Sansa's mouth went dry. "You will marry her." Petyr walked to the window, looking out at the clouds as if he could see the whole realm beneath them. "I will," he said. "The Vale is strong, untouched, proud, and Lysa holds it in her trembling hands." He turned back, eyes bright. "And once I hold Lysa, I hold the Vale." Sansa felt the chill of the mountain air creep under her skin. "And then?" Petyr's smile widened, and it was not warm. It was hungry. "Then," he said, "we climb." Wedding was small, but small did not mean quiet. The Eyrie could make even whispers sound like prophecy. Its stone carried voices, bounced laughter against marble, turned soft sobs into echoes. Lysa wore white, though it was not the crisp white of innocence. It was the frantic white of a woman who had waited too long and did not trust the world not to steal her prize. She clung to Petyr's arm as if her fingers might sink into his skin. Petyr wore gray, subtle and expensive. He looked, absurdly, like a man being rewarded for patience. Sansa stood near the edge of the hall with the other onlookers, her role carefully chosen, close enough to see, far enough not to matter. She kept her hands folded, her face smooth. Elaine Stone would not show too much emotion. Bastards had learned to survive by being unremarkable. Robin sat beside his mother, feet swinging, a cup of sweet milk in his hands. He watched Petyr with the intense suspicion of a boy who sensed his mother's happiness came at a cost to him. Every so often he glanced at Sansa, as if trying to decide whether she was a friend or a threat. When the vows were said and the kiss was pressed to Lysa's lips, she shivered like the touch had burned her. Then she laughed, high, sharp, and ordered wine poured. Music played, food brought. She wanted celebration as proof, as if proof could turn longing into safety. Sansa watched Petyr through it all. He smiled when required. He spoke softly in Lysa's ear. He laughed at her jokes. He let her show him off like a new gown. And in the moments when no one was looking, his gaze drifted, measuring the hall, the servants, the guards, the exits. A man planning not a marriage but an acquisition. Later, when the wine had loosened tongues and dulled suspicion, Lysa's laughter became more erratic. She leaned into Petyr, murmuring old grievances, old wounds. "They're all vipers," she hissed, eyes darting toward the doors as if she expected the Vale Lords to burst in with knives. "They wanted to take my son. They wanted to rule him. But I didn't let them. I didn't. I kept him safe." "You did," Petyr murmured soothingly. "You are very brave." Lysa's gaze slid, suddenly, to Sansa. Jealousy flared across her face like a torch catching dry straw. "And her," she said, voice thick. "Why is she here?" Petyr didn't even glance at Sansa. "She is my daughter," he said calmly. "A harmless thing." Lysa laughed, but the sound was wrong. "Harmless," she repeated. "All girls are harmless until they're not. I was harmless once." Sansa's spine went stiff. She kept her expression neutral, but her heart began to beat faster. Petyr's earlier warning returned. Falling was always one step away. Lysa rose abruptly, swaying. "Come," she demanded of Petyr. "Come with me. I want you." She stopped herself, glancing around, remembering eyes. She forced a smile too wide to be real. "I want to show you something." Petyr stood smoothly, as if he had been waiting. He offered Lysa his arm, guiding her toward a side passage. As he passed Sansa, his eyes flicked to her, just once. A warning, a command. "Stay." But Lysa, drunk on wine and possession, stopped and grabbed Sansa's wrist. "You," she snapped. "You come too." Sansa's mouth opened, but Petyr's voice cut in gentle and firm. "Lysa," he said softly. "Elaine is tired. She should rest." Lysa tightened her grip until Sansa's bones ached. "No," she said, lips curling. "She should see. She should understand." Her eyes glittered with a cruel delight that made Sansa's stomach turn. "Come." Petyr's hand closed around Lysa's wrist. Not hard, not violent, just enough pressure to remind her that he existed as more than a prize. His smile remained, but his eyes sharpened. "Very well," he said. "Let her come." They walked through corridors of white stone. The air grew colder. The sound of music faded behind them, replaced by the constant hush of wind outside. Lysa's footsteps were unsteady, but her grip on Sansa's wrist did not loosen. They reached a narrow balcony enclosed by stone arches. The moon door sat beneath an embroidered curtain, innocent as a bedchamber drape. Beyond it, nothing but open air and the long, long drop. Lysa's breath came fast. She leaned over the stone railing, peering down at clouds as if she could see the ground through them. "Do you know what it feels like?" she whispered. "To watch someone fall?" Robin appeared behind them, drawn by the sound of his mother's voice. He rubbed his eyes sleepily, then brightened when he saw where they were. "Moon door," he said, delighted. "Moon door." Sansa's skin went prickling cold. Lysa turned, eyes wild. "I could throw you through," she hissed, stepping close enough that Sansa smelled wine and sour sweat. "No one would find you. No one would care. A bastard girl, gone." Sansa's breath trapped in her throat. She tried to step back, but the stone railing pressed into her spine. Wind tugged at her hair. Petyr moved between them with quiet grace. "Lysa," he murmured, voice gentle as a lullaby. "Why would you speak so cruelly?" Lysa's face twisted. "Because you look at her," she spat. "Because you brought her here. Because you are afraid," Petyr said softly. And the softness made it worse. "And you don't need to be." Lysa's eyes filled abruptly with tears. "You love me," she demanded. "Say it. Say it in front of her. Say it so she knows." Petyr's gaze held hers. His expression shifted into something that looked like tenderness, like a man finally giving a starving woman bread. He leaned closer, close enough to kiss. "I have always loved you," he said. Lysa shuddered as if the words were a spell. Relief flooded her face, messy and overwhelming. She smiled, wet-eyed, reaching for him. Petyr kissed her. It was brief. It was gentle. It was utterly controlled. When he pulled back, Lysa was trembling with joy. She did not notice how Petyr's hands had settled on her shoulders, guiding her backward step by step toward the curtain. Sansa saw it a heartbeat before it happened. She opened her mouth to shout, but the wind stole her voice. Petyr murmured, "I loved you the moment I met you." Lysa's eyes shone. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, and I will love you," Petyr whispered, "forever." His hands pressed. Lysa's confusion flickered only for an instant. Her fingers scrabbled at his sleeves. Her mouth opened in a soundless question. Then the curtain parted, and Lysa Arryn fell backward through the moon door into empty air. The wind roared. The sound swallowed any scream. Robin stared, frozen, cup slipping from his hands. It hit stone and shattered, white sweet milk spilling like blood. Sansa stood rigid, her mind refusing to catch up to what her eyes had seen. Petyr watched the open sky for a moment, as if listening for the end of a fall he could not hear. Then he turned back to them, face composed, voice steady. "She wanted to fly," he said softly, and in the thin mountain air the lies sounded almost plausible. Robin's face crumpled. He began to sob, high and keening, the sound of a child whose world had snapped in two. Sansa's hands were shaking so hard she could barely feel them. She looked at Petyr and saw no guilt, no panic, only calculation. He stepped closer to her, his voice dropping low. "Remember," he murmured, as if continuing a lesson from the fingers. "We decide the story." Below them, clouds drifted, indifferent. They tried to make Lysa's death into tragedy. Petyr made it into leverage. The next days were a blur of mourning cloth and murmured prayers. Robin's sobs echoed down corridors. Servants moved like ghosts. The Eyrie's white stone seemed even whiter, bleached by grief. Petyr did not wail. He did not tear at his clothes. He wore sorrow like he wore everything else. Tailored, appropriate, convincing enough to satisfy those who wanted to believe him. They brought Lysa's singer, Marillion, in chains. Petyr's men did not need to invent much. Marillion had been arrogant, vain, and foolish enough to think his pretty songs bought him safety. Under pressure, he broke easily. His confession came with tears and incoherent pleading. Sansa watched from the edge of the hall, numb. She knew he was innocent. She knew innocence did not matter. In King's Landing, she had watched men die for less. Here, in the Vale's clean air, she watched it happen again and understood with a new clarity. The Vale was not untouched by war. It had only been waiting. When the Vale lords gathered at the gates of the moon, they came armored and suspicious. The Eyrie was too high for such a crowd, too precarious, too intimate. The gates of the moon was where the Vale did its real work. Stone halls, strong walls, the kind of place where a lord could host a council without fearing the wind would carry his words away. Jon Royce stood at the front like a carved thing, bronze armor gleaming, face hard beneath gray hair. His eyes were wary, his mouth a grim line. Petyr stood across from him, holding Robin's small hand, the picture of grieving stepfather and loyal guardian. Robin sniffled, eyes red, clinging to Petyr's fingers as if Petyr were a pillar keeping him upright. Sansa, Elaine, stood behind Petyr, head bowed, hands folded. She felt eyes on her, curious and assessing. A bastard girl meant nothing, and she used that nothingness like a shield. Lord Royce spoke first, voice rough. "We are sorry for Lady Arryn," he said, and the formality did not soften the accusation beneath it. "But we must speak of what comes next." Petyr inclined his head. "Of course." Another lord, an older man with heavy jowls, snorted. "What comes next is simple. The boy needs a regent. The Vale needs strong hands. Lady Arryn kept us at arm's length and called it protection. Now, she is dead." "Nunay, anami, adaman, tree." Petyr's expression tightened with just the right amount of sorrow. "A terrible loss," he murmured. Jon's gaze narrowed. "And you," he said bluntly. "You were her husband for a day." "A day," someone else echoed, almost spitting the word. "And now you stand to benefit." Petyr's smile was small, patient. "If I benefit," he said, "it is only because I loved her." Sansa bit the inside of her cheek. Loved her. The words were smooth as oiled steel. A murmur ran through the lords, skepticism, disapproval. The old Vale pride bristling at an outsider in their midst. Petyr lifted his free hand slightly, calming. "My lords," he said, voice gentle, "I understand your fear, truly. You worry that the Vale will be ruled by a man from the Fingers, a man of no great name. You worry that your young lord will be manipulated." He paused, letting the fears settle, acknowledging them in a way that made the listeners feel seen. It was a simple trick, a powerful one. Then he continued, "Tell me, who has kept the Vale safe through this war?" Silence, thick and unwilling. Petyr's gaze moved across their faces. Lady Arryn refused to spill Vale blood for the squabbles of southern kings. That is why your fields are unburned. That is why your sons sit here alive. A younger lord scoffed. She hid, he snapped. She cowered in the sky with her boy. Petyr's smile did not change. Perhaps, he conceded. Or perhaps she understood that war is expensive. He let that sit. Lords understood expense. They might posture about honor, but they counted coins like everyone else. The Vale is strong, Petyr went on. But strength spent foolishly is weakness in disguise. The Lannisters are bleeding gold. The Tyrells are pouring it into marriages and banners. The Iron Bank in Bravos watches and waits. The North is broken. The Riverland's drowning. The realm is... He spread his hands as if weighing something unseen. Unstable. Lord Royce's jaw tightened. And you would stabilize it, he said, skeptical. Petyr looked almost offended by the idea. I would keep the Vale what it has been. Safe, he said softly. I would keep Lord Arryn here. He squeezed Robin's hand gently. From being pulled into a war that is not ours. I would honor Lady Arryn's wishes. Robin sniffled, and Petyr's thumb rubbed soothing circles against his knuckles. The gesture was calculated. It worked anyway. One of the lords leaned forward. And what do you ask in return? Petyr smiled, as if relieved the conversation had finally become practical. Time, he said. Let me serve as Lord Protector for a season. 6 moons. If I fail, you may cast me out and appoint another. If I succeed, the Vale remains whole. Mine. A murmur. 6 moons sounded reasonable. Temporary. Men loved temporary power because it did not require admitting what it really was. Jon Royce's gaze hardened. Why should we trust you? He demanded. You served in King's Landing. You served under a king who died choking at his own wedding. Petyr's eyes softened. I served the realm, he said. And I left King's Landing with Tywin's blessing to secure the Vale's allegiance. I have done what I was asked. He turned slightly, letting the light catch his face. If the realm is going to drown, my lords, do you want the Vale to be dragged under with it? Or do you want to be the hand that holds the rope? Sansa watched the exchange with a sinking realization. Petyr was not arguing to convince them of his virtue. He was offering them what they wanted most, a reason to do what was easiest and still feel honorable. Jon Royce held Petyr's gaze for a long, tense moment. Then he looked down at Robin, at the boy's tear-streaked face, at the way the child clung to Petyr like a life raft. 6 moons, Jon said finally, voice like stone grinding. No more. You will answer to us. Petyr bowed his head. Gladly, he said. The lords began to disperse, muttering among themselves. Some looked satisfied. Some looked uneasy. None looked victorious. Sansa's breath came shallow. Petyr had stepped onto the Vale's board and placed himself at its center, not by force, but by offering men the comfort of believing they still held the reins. As they left the hall, Petyr leaned close to Sansa without looking at her. Do you see? He murmured. Sansa stared at the backs of the lords, at the sway of cloaks, the gleam of bronze. You lied, she whispered. Petyr's smile returned, brief and bright. I negotiated, he corrected. There is a difference. Robin tugged Petyr's sleeve. Will they make you go away? He asked, voice trembling. Petyr crouched, bringing himself to Robin's height. His expression softened into perfect reassurance. No, he said. Not unless you want them to. Robin sniffed. I don't. Petyr kissed the boy's forehead, gentle as a mother. Then they won't, he said. Sansa watched and felt the old sharp edge of fear shift into something else. Understanding, perhaps. Or resignation. Petyr stood, smoothing his coat as if smoothing the world. He glanced toward the window where winter's sunlight cut through dust, illuminating the faint swirl of feathers in a caged raven's wings. 6 moons, he murmured, almost to himself. To any other man, it would have sounded like a deadline. To Petyr Baelish, it sounded like an opening. In King's Landing, grief lasted as long as it was useful. The small council chamber smelled of ink and stale smoke. Maps were spread across the table like flayed skin, pinned down by weights that looked suspiciously like coins. There were ledgers too, their pages packed with neat numbers that meant famine or feast depending on who read them. Tywin sat at the head of the table, spine straight as a spear, expression carved from granite. The hand's chain lay heavy on his shoulders. He did not look like a man who had just lost a grandson. He looked like a man counting the cost of a setback. Cersei paced behind her chair like a caged cat, eyes red-rimmed, hair coming loose at the edges of her braids. She smelled faintly of wine. Her grief had teeth. "They will pay," she hissed, voice low and venomous. "Every one of them. The Tyrells, the dwarf, that little northern whore." "Enough," Tywin said, and the word cut cleanly through her fury. Cersei stopped, trembling, but her eyes blazed. "He was my son," she spat. "He was our king," Tywin corrected, "and he is dead. Now we must keep the realm from realizing how fragile that makes us." "No." Margaery sat very still, hands folded in her lap. Her face was pale, her eyes bright with tears that had been measured and placed like jewels. Whether they were real or not hardly mattered. She was already thinking ahead. "The Tyrells always did. I am still the queen," she said softly. "Widow now, but..." "Not for long," Tywin said. He looked at her with the cold practicality of a man assessing a weapon. "Tommen will need a wife." Margaery's mouth quivered, just slightly. Shock, grief, outrage, all proper. Beneath it, there was the smallest flicker of satisfaction. The crown would remain on her head in some form. That was what mattered. Varys stood near the wall, hands folded, expression sorrowful in a way that might have been genuine. The spider loved children, some said. Or perhaps he loved the idea of what children could become if the realm stopped breaking them. "A tragedy," Varys murmured. "And such a dreadful spectacle." Maester Pycelle dabbed at his eyes with a cloth that looked too clean. "The poor boy," he whimpered. "The poor, sweet boy." Tywin's gaze flicked to a raven scroll lying open on the table. "We have another problem," he said. Cersei leaned forward, hungry for a new target. "What now?" Tywin's voice was flat. "Sansa Stark has fled." The words made the chamber go unnaturally quiet for a heartbeat, as if even the torches were listening. Margaery's eyes widened. She echoed. "But she vanished during the chaos," Tywin said. "The guards swear they did not see her leave. Sir Dontos Hollard is missing as well." Cersei's lips pulled back from her teeth. "She did it," she said, certainty sharpening her grief into rage. "She poisoned him. The little bitch poisoned my son and ran." Tywin's gaze moved to her, slow and heavy. "Perhaps," he said. "Or perhaps she was made to run so that you would say exactly that." Cersei's nostrils flared. "Who would dare?" Tywin's fingers tapped the table once, twice, measured. "Someone who knows how to turn panic into cover." Varys's eyes lowered, but his voice remained mild. "Lord Baelish," he murmured, and made it sound like a thought rather than an accusation. Cersei's head snapped around. "Littlefinger?" Her laugh was sharp and bitter. "He fled this city months ago with his pockets full of our gold. He would not dare." "He would," Tywin interrupted, "if he saw advantage." Margaery's expression stayed composed, but her hands tightened on her skirt. Olenna was not present, but her absence sat in the room like an unspoken joke. Tywin stared at the ledger closest to him. "The crown's finances were already delicate," he said, choosing the word like a man choosing a blade. "Baelish made them appear manageable. He found coin where there was none. He borrowed. He rearranged debts. He lied." Cersei spat. Tywin's gaze sharpened. "He did what he was hired to do," he said. "And now he is gone, and the realm is bleeding. and our enemies smell weakness." Varys's voice was gentle. "Lord Baelish has always had a talent for being elsewhere when something unfortunate happens." Cersei slammed a hand onto the table. "Find her," she snarled. "Find Sansa and bring her to me. I will have her confess. I will have her—" Tywin's stare pinned her. "You will do nothing that jeopardizes Tommen," he said. "You will not indulge your rage at the expense of the crown." Cersei's breath hitched. "He's my son," she whispered, and the whisper carried more threat than her earlier shouting. Tywin did not flinch. "He is the realm," he said coldly, "and you are going to help me keep it." Margaery's voice slid into the space between them like silk. "If Sansa is gone," she said, "then the North." "The North is in ashes," Tywin cut in. "What matters is perception." He tapped the raven scroll. "We will announce that the traitor fled, that her guilt is obvious. We will reward anyone who brings her to us. Nay. And if Baelish has her?" Varys asked softly. Tywin's mouth tightened. "Then Baelish has something valuable," he said. "And men with valuable things can be made to trade." Cersei laughed. Bitter. "Trade?" she echoed. "For what?" Tywin's gaze was distant now, fixed on a map as if the parchment could answer. "For peace," he said finally. "Or for time." Outside the chamber, bells tolled for the dead king. Inside, Tywin Lannister began to rebuild the realm as if rebuilding a fortress after a breach. He did not yet realize that Petyr Baelish had not fled with a hostage. He had fled with a claim. Black cells smelled like damp and despair. Even the torches seemed reluctant to burn here, their flames low and sullen, casting shadows that crawled along the stone like living things. Tyrion sat on a pile of straw that did nothing to soften the cold. Chains bit into his wrists, leaving angry red marks. He stared at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. The hands that had held a goblet at a wedding. The hands that had been splashed with wine, and then, in the court's eyes, with poison. Footsteps approached. Heavy. Familiar. Jaime came into view, torch held high enough to keep the darkness from swallowing him. His golden hand caught the firelight, an obscene gleam in a place built for misery. His face looked older than Tyrion remembered, the lines at his eyes deeper, his mouth tighter. War and loss and shame had carved him. "Tyrion," Jaime said quietly. Tyrion didn't look up. "Come to watch your little brother rot?" he asked, voice dry as dust. Jaime's jaw worked. "I came," he said, "because this is wrong." Tyrion snorted. "Wrong is the word you use when you mean inconvenient." Jaime flinched, but he did not retreat. "I know you didn't kill Joffrey," he said, and the certainty in his voice was almost painful. Tyrion finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, his beard rough, but there was a spark of something fierce beneath the exhaustion. "You know?" he echoed. "Or you want to know?" Jaime hesitated, and the hesitation answered. From the shadows behind Jaime, a soft voice drifted. "Truth is a slippery thing," Varys murmured, stepping into the torchlight with the careful grace of a man who understood how easily it could burn. "But I suspect Lord Tyrion is innocent of this particular crime." Tyrion's laugh was bitter. "How generous," he said. "Are you here to bring me comfort, Varys? Or to make sure I die quickly so the realm can pretend it's clean?" Varys' expression was mild, almost mournful. "I am here," he said softly, "because the realm is never clean, and pretending otherwise only makes the blood smell worse." Jaime's gaze snapped to him. "Why are you here?" he demanded. Varys spread his hands. "To listen," he said simply. "Listening is my profession." Tyrion leaned back against the wall, chains clinking. "Listening won't save me," he said. "My sister wants my head. My father wants the realm to believe he controls it, and the Tyrells want their hands washed of anything unpleasant." Jaime's torch crackled. "There may be a way," he said, voice low. Tyrion's eyes narrowed. "A way," he repeated, distrustful. "There's always a way," usually with a knife in my back. Jaime swallowed. If you confess, he said, the words heavy, Father will spare your life. He will send you to the wall. Tyrion stared at him. The silence stretched, taut and dangerous. Confess, Tyrion said slowly, to a crime I didn't commit. Jaime's face tightened. It's the only way to keep you alive, he insisted. You can live. You mean I can freeze? Tyrion cut in. I can take the black. I can spend my days shoveling snow and listening to men with fewer teeth than morals talk about honor. Jaime's eyes flashed. It's better than dying. Tyrion's smile was sharp. Is it? He asked softly. Is it better than dying, Jaime? Or is it simply better for you? Jaime looked away, and the movement was like surrender. I can't lose you too, he whispered. Tyrion's expression flickered. Anger, pain, something dangerously close to love. Then it hardened again. You already lost me, he said. Varys watched the exchange, his face unreadable. There's another matter, he said gently. Tyrion's eyes snapped to him. Oh, he said. Do tell. Varys's voice remained soft. Sansa Stark has vanished, he said. Tyrion's breath caught just slightly. Sansa, he repeated, and for a heartbeat his tone held something like worry. Jaime frowned. What does that matter now? It matters, Varys said, because stories need villains, and a missing girl is a convenient one, and because whoever has her holds a piece of the North. Tyrion's gaze sharpened. Who has her? He demanded. Varys's lips curved faintly. If I knew, he said, I might not be standing in a dungeon discussing it with you. Tyrion laughed, humorless. Littlefinger, he said suddenly, the name tasting like old suspicion. Varys did not deny it. Lord Baelish is talented, he said carefully, and he has always had an interest in the Stark girls. Jaime's face tightened with disgust. If he has her, Varys said softly, then he has something the crown wants, and something the lords might rally around. And if he is clever, he will not sell her too cheaply. Tyrion's chains clinked as he shifted. His mind, even in a cell, still moved like a knife seeking soft flesh. He wouldn't risk it, he said slowly. Not openly. Varys' eyes glinted. Openly, he agreed. No. Jaime's torch sputtered, and the shadows seemed to grow. Tyrion leaned forward, voice low. Why are you telling me this? He asked Varys. You don't do kindness. Varys' gaze held his. Because the realm will need you, he said softly, and the words sounded insane in the damp dark. Not as you are now, chained and hated, but as you might be. Tyrion's laugh was quiet, bitter. You think I'll be alive long enough to matter? Varys' smile was faint. That, he said, depends on which stories are allowed to survive. Jaime's eyes flicked between them, uncertainty etched into his face. He wanted to be a good brother. He wanted to be a good man. The gods, if they existed, had not made it easy for him. Tyrion stared at the torchlight reflected in Jaime's golden hand, at the way it made the metal seem like a piece of the sun stolen and dragged into a dungeon. He thought of crowns and chains and stories written in blood. And somewhere, far above them, Petyr Baelish was writing his own story with ink that could choke kings. Petyr worked best when the world thought he was resting. The solar they gave him at the gates of the moon was plain compared to the Red Keep's gilded chambers, but plain meant fewer eyes and fewer distractions. Outside the windows, the Vale's mountains rose like a row of teeth. Snow still clung to distant peaks, and the wind carried the promise of colder days. Inside, candlelight warmed parchment and ink. Ledgers lay open like scripture. Ravens waited in cages, their black eyes bright with impatient intelligence. Petyr sat at the desk with sleeves rolled back slightly, quill moving with practiced ease. He wrote in a neat hand that made lies look respectable. The wax seals beside him were arranged like game pieces, each stamped with a sigil that represented a household, a promise, a hunger. Maester Coleman hovered nearby, hands tucked into sleeves, face carefully blank. He had the careful neutrality of a man who had served too many lords and learned that truth was dangerous. Robin slept in a chair by the fire, a blanket half falling off his narrow shoulders. His mouth hung open slightly. Every so often he twitched, as if dreaming of the moon door. Sansa stood near the wall, silent. Petyr had told her to watch. He said she would learn more from watching than from being lectured. She did not know if he meant the numbers or the manipulation, but she watched all the same. Petyr dipped his quill, wrote another line, then glanced up at Coleman. "The harvest reports?" he asked. Coleman stepped forward and placed a parchment on the desk. "Better than expected, my lord," he said. "The Vale's fields have been spared war. The granaries are full." Petyr smiled faintly. "Full granaries are like full coffers," he murmured. "They make men brave." Sansa's gaze flicked to him. "Brave?" she echoed quietly. "Or greedy?" Petyr's eyes gleamed with approval, as if she had answered a riddle correctly. "Both," he said. "Bravery is often only greed wearing a prettier cloak." He scanned the parchment, then set it aside. "And Gulltown?" Coleman hesitated. "The merchants complain," he said carefully. "They say your taxes." "My taxes keep their roads safe," Petyr said smoothly. "And their docks free of pirates. They will complain and pay all the same." Sansa shifted. "They could refuse," she said. Petyr's quill paused. He looked up at her, interest bright. "Could they?" he asked. Sansa thought of her father in Winterfell, of his straightforward honor, of men who followed because they believed. Petyr's world was different. In Petyr's world, belief was something you bought or manufactured. "They could if they thought someone else would protect them," Sansa said slowly. Petyr's smile widened. "Exactly," he said. "So we make sure they don't think that." He turned back to his desk and selected a scroll sealed with plain wax. He held it between finger and thumb as if it were delicate. "This," he said, "is for Braavos." Sansa's stomach tightened. "The Iron Bank," she said, the words strange on her tongue. She remembered hearing of it in Winterfell as a distant, powerful thing, like a god across the sea. In King's Landing, she had learned that gods could be negotiated with, if you had enough gold. Petyr nodded. "The Iron Bank does not love kings," he said. "It loves repayment, and the crown has made repayment into a fairy tale." He broke the seal and read aloud a line, not to boast, but to teach. "The crown's revenues have been exaggerated," he said, voice calm. "Its debts hidden, its promises generous." Coleman shifted uncomfortably. "Is it wise to tell them that?" he asked. Petyr's eyes flicked to him, amused. "It is wise," he said, "because they will find out eventually. Better they hear it from a man offering solutions than from a man demanding mercy." Sansa stared at the scroll. "You're telling them the crown is weak," she said softly. Petyr's gaze sharpened. "I'm telling them the truth," he said, and the phrase would have been hilarious if it weren't so cold. "A truth with a handle." He rolled the scroll back up, sealed it again with fresh wax, his own seal, and slid it toward Coleman. "Send it," he said, "and send another to Gulltown. I want 3 ships prepared. Quietly, no banners." Coleman bowed. "As you command." When the maester left, Sansa remained by the wall, watching Petyr's hands move across paper. He wrote another letter, then another, the rhythm steady as a heartbeat. "Who are those for?" Sansa asked after a time. Petyr did not look up. "Friends," he said. Sansa's lips pressed together. "You have friends?" The sarcasm escaped before she could stop it. Petyr laughed softly, genuinely amused. "No," he said. "I have investments." He paused, then looked up at her. Candlelight caught in his eyes, making them appear almost golden. "Do you know why the realm is always at war?" he asked. Sansa frowned. "Because men are greedy," she said. Because they want power. Petyr nodded. Yes, he said. But more than that, because they believe power comes from swords. He tapped his ledger with the quill. They forget that swords need food. Horses need oats. Armies need boots and nails and tents and coin. He leaned back slightly, studying her as if she were another map. When the crown cannot pay, he said softly, its banners sag. Its soldiers desert. Its lords become creative. Sansa's throat tightened. You're going to make them unable to pay. Petyr's smile returned, slow and pleased. I'm going to let them do it to themselves, he corrected. I merely remove the cushions. Robin stirred in his sleep, murmuring something incoherent. Petyr glanced at him, and for a heartbeat his expression softened into something like genuine affection. Then it vanished, replaced by that familiar calm. Sansa's hands clenched. And what happens when they fall? She asked. Petyr's gaze met hers, steady. Then, he said, they will look for someone who can stand. Sansa swallowed. You. Petyr's smile sharpened. Perhaps, he said. Or perhaps someone even more useful. His gaze flicked to her, and Sansa felt the weight of it like a chain. Useful. That was how he saw her. Not as a girl, not as a Stark, but as a key that could open doors. In Winterfell, she had believed the world ran on honor. In King's Landing, she had learned it ran on fear. In the Vale, watching Petyr's quill move across parchment like a spider spinning silk, she began to understand that the true engine was something colder. Control. Petyr sealed another letter and set it aside. Come, he said lightly, standing. You've had enough ink for one day. Robin will wake soon and demand a story. We must be prepared to give him one. Sansa stared at the piles of scrolls, the wax seals, the ledgers full of numbers that could starve cities. She thought of Joffrey's purple face, of Dantos dying on wet planks, of Lysa falling into clouds. Stories, she realized, were not only told, they were built. And Petyr Baelish was laying foundations. Braavos smelled of salt and ink and cold ambition. In the Iron Bank, the air was cooler than it had any right to be, as if the stone itself refused the warmth of human bodies. Columns rose like the trunks of ancient trees, supporting a ceiling lost in shadow. Clerks moved quietly, gray-robed, their sandals whispering over polished floors. The sound of quills scratching parchment filled the hall like insects in summer. Tycho Nestoris sat at a long table, his posture straight, his expression composed. His hair was neatly trimmed, his beard oiled. He had the tidy face of a man who believed in order and had spent his life surrounded by it. He was not the most powerful man in the room. The Iron Bank did not place its power in one seat, but he was the sort of man power trusted to speak for it. A sealed letter lay before him. The wax bore a mockingbird. Tycho broke the seal carefully, as if the wax might bite. He read, eyes moving smoothly down the page. The letter was polite. Of course it was. Petyr Baelish did nothing without manners. The first lines offered condolences for recent turmoil in the Seven Kingdoms. The next praised Braavosi prudence. Only then did the blade slide in. Tycho's eyes narrowed just slightly at mention of crown revenues and hidden obligations, at mention of loans extended on questionable security, at mention, carefully phrased, of certain creative accountings that had made the Iron Throne look healthier than it was. He set the letter down, fingers steepled. A clerk approached, silent, waiting. Tycho did not look up. Summon the key holders, he said softly. The clerk bowed and hurried away. Tycho read the letter again, slower this time, tasting each implication. Petyr did not write like a man begging forgiveness. He wrote like a man offering information, and expecting the information to be worth something. Behind Tycho, a row of ledger books rose like a wall. Each book contained the debts of kings, the desperation of cities, the futures of men who believe themselves untouchable. Braavos did not worship gods. It worshipped balance sheets. When the keyholders arrived, they were not dramatic. They were ordinary-looking men and women in plain robes, faces calm, eyes sharp. They carried no crowns, no swords. Their authority sat in their stillness. Tycho laid the letter out on the table. "From the Vale," he said. One of the keyholders, a woman with a thin scar along her jaw, picked it up and read. Her expression did not change. "Petyr Baelish," she said. Tycho nodded. "Former master of coin," he said. "A man who knows the crown's numbers." Another keyholder snorted softly. "A thief who knows how to dress theft as stewardship." Tycho's mouth tightened. "Perhaps," he allowed. "But his accusations are specific." They read in silence. The scratching of distant quills continued. The faint sound of water in a canal outside drifted in through a window crack, as if reminding them that even stone halls were connected to the world. Finally, the woman with the scar set the letter down. "If the crown is weaker than we believed," she said, "we adjust our expectations." One of the men leaned forward. "We do not forgive debts," he said flatly. "We do not soften terms because kings are foolish." Tycho agreed. He had spent his life watching rulers treat borrowing like a feast they could leave without paying. The Iron Bank was the hand that always followed, patient, relentless. "And yet," Tycho said carefully, "if the crown collapses, repayment becomes complicated." A murmur ran through the keyholders. Not disagreement, but calculation. The Iron Bank did not fear kings. It feared chaos because chaos made debts difficult to collect. The scarred woman tapped a letter. "Baelish suggests alternatives," she said. Tycho nodded. "He offers routes for repayment," he said. "And he implies, without stating, that the realm will soon need a steadier hand." A keyholder's eyes narrowed. "He wants us to back him," he said bluntly. Tycho chose his words. "He wants us to be prepared," he corrected. "He knows that when the Iron Throne stops paying, we fund another claimant. We have done it before." The keyholders sat in silence, weighing. In that silence, Tycho felt the shift, the subtle realignment that happened when information changed the shape of possibility. Finally, the scarred woman spoke. "We tighten credit to King's Landing," she said. "No more generosity until assurances are made. And we send an envoy," another keyholder added. "To listen, to watch." Tycho's gaze dropped to the mockingbird seal. He imagined Petyr Baelish, seated at some wooden desk in a mountain castle, writing letters that could topple kings. "A clever man," Tycho murmured. The scarred woman's mouth curved, almost a smile. "Clever men are often desperate," she said. "And desperation makes them predictable." Tycho did not smile. He had learned that clever men were the most dangerous precisely because they thought they were predictable. He folded the letter carefully. "Very well," he said. "We tighten, we watch, and we wait." Outside, gondolas slid through canals, their oars dipping with quiet rhythm. Braavos continued to breathe, indifferent to distant kings choking on poisoned wine. But in the Iron Bank, a new ledger page had been opened, and on it the realm's future began to be rewritten, line by line, coin by coin, by a man who understood that debts were stronger than swords. When coin tightened in King's Landing, the city's hunger became loud. It began quietly, a baker closing early, flour gone, a butcher's stall with fewer cuts of meat, a fishmonger selling yesterday's catch because the boats had not gone out. Little inconveniences, the kind the rich dismissed with a wave of jeweled fingers. Then the prices rose, and the small folk stopped calling it inconvenience. They called it theft. Cersei rode through the streets in a litter draped with crimson cloth, the lion of Lannister embroidered in gold thread. The city outside stank of sweat and refuse and the faint sweetness of rot. Through the slats of the litter she saw faces pressed close, thin, angry, suspicious. Margaery rode with her, posture perfect, expression composed. She wore green, bright as new leaves, a deliberate defiance of the city's grime. She held a small basket of bread on her lap. Cersei's eyes flicked to it with contempt. "Charity," she said sharply. "You think loaves will make them love you?" Margaery's smile was mild. "It helps," she said. "Better they think the crown feeds them than starves them." Cersei snorted. "The crown doesn't feed them," she said. "My father's gold feeds them." Margaery's gaze remained polite, but there was steel beneath it. "Gold does not bake bread," she said softly. "Flour does." The litter slowed. Outside, the crowd thickened. Gold cloaks shoved at bodies with the flat of their spears, trying to keep space around royal cloth. The crowd did not move easily. Hunger made men stubborn. A septon stood on a broken step, holding a 7-pointed star high. His robes were dusty, his face gaunt. "The gods see," he shouted. "The gods see the sins of the court. The gods see the filth. The lies, the harlotry." Cersei's jaw tightened. "Remove him," she hissed to a guard. The guard hesitated. The septon's words found eager ears among the crowd. Margaery leaned forward, eyes bright. "Let me," she said softly. Before Cersei could protest, Margaery opened the litter door and stepped out onto the street. The crowd surged, curiosity overriding caution. Gold cloaks tensed, spears lifting. Margaery raised her hands, palms open, smiling like sunlight. "My friends," she called, voice carrying. "I hear you. I know you are hungry." "Now me," the crowd murmured, a shifting, restless sound. Margaery reached into her basket and tossed a loaf to a child near the front. The child snatched it like a treasure. Another loaf followed, then another. Hands reached. The crowd pressed forward. Cersei watched from inside the litter, fury tightening her chest. It was obscene, watching a Tyrell queen play savior in Lannister streets. The septon continued shouting, "The gods demand justice! The gods demand purity!" Margaery turned toward him, smile still in place. "And the gods also demand compassion," she said sweetly. "We will feed you. We will listen. We will." A man in the crowd shouted, "Where's the bread then?" Another shouted, "Where's the money?" A woman shrieked, "My son died in your war." The crowd's mood shifted like wind changing direction. Margaery's smile faltered, only a fraction. Cersei's fingers dug into the litter cushions. "Get her back in," she snarled. Gold cloaks pushed forward, but the crowd was too thick now, too close. A hand grabbed at Margaery's sleeve. Another reached for her hair. The queen stumbled, still trying to smile, still trying to speak. "Back!" a guard shouted. "Back, or I'll..." A rock flew, struck a guard's cheek, and blood spattered. The guard cursed, swung his spear, and panic rippled. Cersei's heart hammered. This was how riots began, not with grand speeches, but with one rock, one shove, one frightened soldier deciding fear was permission. Margaery was pulled back by guards, shoved into the litter, breath coming fast. Her cheeks were flushed. Her eyes were too bright. Cersei slammed the door shut and glared at her. "You wanted their love," she hissed. "This is what it looks like." Margaery swallowed, forcing composure. "They're starving," she said. "They're afraid. They should be afraid of us," Cersei snapped. Outside, the septon's voice rose again, louder now, riding the energy of the crowd. "Sin brings hunger. The gods punish the wicked." Cersei's mind flicked, cold and sharp. The faith had always been useful when it stayed obedient. Now it smelled blood in the water. As the litter lurched forward, forcing its way through the crowd, Cersei stared through the slats and felt something that had nothing to do with grief. She felt the realm slipping. Back in the Vale, Petyr Baelish would have smiled at that word. Slipping meant falling, and falling meant someone else could catch. The Vale feasted as if the rest of the realm were a bad rumor. In the great hall of the Gates of the Moon, Long tables groaned beneath platters of roasted lamb, bowls of buttered turnips, wheels of cheese as big as shields. Bread was stacked in warm, fragrant towers. Wine flowed thick and red. Men laughed loudly, the way men did when they wanted to convince themselves they were safe. Petyr sat at the high table beside Robin's seat. Though Robin's seat was often empty, Robin wandered, restless, seeking attention like a candle seeks air. Petyr made sure the boy was always visible when it mattered, always held close enough that no lord could claim neglect. Lothar Bruin stood near the high table like a patient hound, watchful, broad-shouldered, scarred. He had the look of a man who had fought for his supper and did not forget the taste of hunger. Petyr had raised him quietly, given him a place, a title, respect. Lothar returned the favor with unspoken loyalty. Sansa, Elaine, sat lower, among ladies and lesser lords, exactly where Petyr wanted her. Seen, but not scrutinized too closely. Miranda Royce sat beside her, bright-eyed, laughing too easily. She was pretty in a sharp, fox-like way, the kind of beauty that came with curiosity and teeth. "You don't speak much," Miranda observed, sipping wine. Sansa smiled politely. "I prefer listening," she said. Miranda's eyes glinted. "That's wise," she said. "Listening teaches you what people are afraid of." Sansa's fingers tightened around her cup. "And what are you afraid of?" she asked, careful to keep her tone light. Miranda's smile widened. "Boredom," she said. Then she leaned closer, voice dropping conspiratorial. "And strangers who arrive with dead ladies and claims to protect little boys." Sansa's breath caught. She forced herself to laugh softly, as if it were a joke. Miranda's gaze flicked over Sansa's face, sharp as a needle. "You have sad eyes for a bastard," she said, and the words were too casual to be kind. Sansa kept her smile in place. "Bastards can be sad," she said. Miranda shrugged. "Of course," she agreed. "But you're a pretty one. Men will look at you and want to rescue you. That can be dangerous." Sansa thought of rescue, thought of knights who promised safety and died on docks, thought of kings who promised love and offered cruelty. Rescue had always been a lie. At the high table, Petyr laughed at something a lord said, his smile easy, his eyes always moving. He lifted his cup in a toast. "To the Vale," he called, voice warm. "To peace." The hall roared approval. Men slammed cups on wood. Peace tasted like full bellies. Robin wandered between tables, his pale face pinched, eyes narrowed whenever he saw Sansa talking to someone who wasn't him. He stopped near her, frowning. "Elaine," he said, voice petulant. "Come sit by me." Sansa's stomach tightened. Robin's affection was not gentle. It was possessive, demanding, unpredictable. Petyr encouraged it because it made Robin cling to them, and because it made the lords hesitate to separate them. Sansa rose smoothly, curtsied to Miranda, and followed Robin. She moved with careful grace, her expression soft, her hands folded. Elaine Stone was obedient. Elaine Stone was harmless. Robin led her to a chair near the high table and plopped down, scowling. "They all stare," he complained. "They think they can take my castle." Sansa sat. "They can't," she said gently. Robin's gaze flicked to Petyr. "Petyr says they can't," he said, and there was relief in the words, like a child repeating a charm against monsters. Petyr leaned down, ruffled Robin's hair, smiling. "No one will take anything from you," he said softly. "Not while I'm here." Robin's shoulders loosened. He sipped sweet wine and made a face. "It tastes bad," he complained. Petyr chuckled. "Then don't drink it," he said, as if the world were that simple. Across the hall, lords drank and watched. Their eyes slid to Petyr, to Robin, to Sansa. Their curiosity was quiet, but it was there, like a knife hidden in a sleeve. Petyr rose later, moving through the hall with effortless sociability. He spoke to a merchant from Gulltown about ship timbers. He spoke to a knight about tourneys. He spoke to a lord about a marriage alliance, smiling as if marriages were pleasant things rather than political chains. Sansa watched him and learned. He never asked for anything directly. He offered a favor here, a promise there, a shared joke, a sympathetic ear. He let men feel as if they were choosing him, as if they were granting him trust out of their own wisdom. Near the fire, Lothar murmured something to Petyr. Petyr's smile did not change, but his eyes shifted, attentive. A raven had arrived. Sansa saw the movement, Petyr's hand accepting a scroll, his thumb breaking wax. Then he folded it away before anyone could read. He returned to his seat beside Robin, still smiling. He lifted his cup in another toast, and the hall roared again, oblivious. Sansa leaned slightly toward him when the noise dulled. "Bad news?" she murmured. Petyr's eyes flicked to her, amused. "News," he corrected. "There is no such thing as good or bad, only useful or inconvenient." "And which is this?" Petyr's smile sharpened. "Useful," he said softly. "But not yet." Sansa's pulse quickened. She stared at the lords laughing and eating, at the abundance on the tables, and understood what Petyr was doing more clearly than ever. He was building a realm here, quiet and strong, while the rest of Westeros starved itself in public. He was making the Vale into a promise. And men, she was learning, would kneel for promises as quickly as they would kneel for swords. The Eyrie again, because Robin demanded it. He had grown restless at the gates of the moon, complaining of the air, of the noise, of how the mountains looked from below rather than above. Petyr indulged him. Petyr always indulged him, not because he enjoyed the boy's whims, but because indulging a lordling kept the boy pliant and kept the lords quiet. So they climbed, winding up the narrow path again, the sky opening around them like a threat. Sansa followed Robin along a balcony where marble gleamed and clouds drifted below like slow-moving ghosts. Robin clutched a small wooden falcon, its paint chipped from being squeezed too hard. He stared down into the white emptiness, eyes bright. "If you fell," he said suddenly, "would you land on a cloud?" Sansa's throat tightened. "No," she said carefully. "Clouds aren't solid." Robin frowned, displeased by reality. "Petyr says clouds can be anything," he said stubbornly. "He says people believe what they want." Sansa's heart gave a strange twist. "He says that?" she asked, keeping her tone light. Robin nodded vigorously. "He says people see what they want to see. That's why they didn't see Mother." He stopped, face pinching. Sansa's hand moved instinctively to his shoulder, then hesitated. Touching Robin could soothe him or set him off, depending on the day. She placed her fingers lightly anyway, gentle. "It wasn't your fault," she said. Robin's eyes filled fast. "I wanted her to fly," he whispered, and the words made Sansa's stomach churn. He didn't understand what flying meant. Or perhaps he did, in some twisted, childish way. Behind them, the curtain of the moon door stirred in the wind. Sansa refused to look at it. She had seen a woman vanish through it, her body swallowed by sky. The memory lived in her bones. Robin turned, sudden and sharp. "Do you like Petyr?" he demanded. The question hit her like a thrown stone. Sansa's face remained smooth because she had learned how to keep it smooth. "He's kind to you," she said. "That's not what I asked," Robin snapped. His fingers dug into the wooden falcon until the paint flaked. Sansa forced her voice calm. "I don't know him well," she said. Robin's frown deepened. "He loves me," he said, defiant. Sansa's gaze flicked past him, across the balcony, to where Petyr stood at a respectful distance, speaking quietly with a guard. Petyr's face was composed, but his eyes were on them, watching, always watching. "He wants to marry you," Robin blurted. Sansa's breath caught. Who'd you that?" she asked, though she already knew. The servants whispered. The lords whispered. Robin heard everything, because Robin listened like a frightened animal. Robin's eyes shone with angry tears. "I heard," he said. "If he marries you, you'll be mine too. Like mother was mine. Me. Ebda." Sansa felt cold spread through her limbs. "Robin," she said softly, choosing each word like stepping stones over a river. "I'm not." Robin's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong for such a thin boy. "You'll stay," he demanded. "You won't leave." Sansa's pulse hammered. She looked at his fingers on her skin and thought of other fingers. Joffrey's, grabbing her hair, forcing her to look. She forced herself not to flinch. "I won't leave," she lied, because truth was dangerous. Robin's breathing eased just slightly. He released her wrist, then turned away, staring out over the clouds again as if the emptiness could soothe him. Sansa's wrist ached. She rubbed it gently, eyes stinging. Petyr approached, footsteps soft on marble. He smiled as he reached them, the kind of smile that made him look harmless. "Everything all right?" he asked. Robin nodded quickly, eager for approval. "Elaine won't leave," he said. Petyr's eyes flicked to Sansa, and Sansa saw something there. Approval, perhaps, or relief. He placed a hand on Robin's shoulder, gentle. "Good," he said. "She is part of our family now." Sansa's skin pricked at the word family. It sounded like a cage dressed as comfort. Petyr's gaze softened as he looked at Robin. "Would you like a story?" he asked. Robin's expression brightened. "Yes," he said eagerly. "Tell me about when you fought." Petyr chuckled softly. "I did not fight," he said. "I bled. There is a difference." Robin pouted, but he settled, leaning against Petyr's leg like a child against a tree. Petyr began to speak. Some story of a tourney, of young foolishness, of a duel with Brandon Stark. The details were careful, chosen, meant to entertain and instruct at once. Sansa listened, but her mind wandered. Brandon Stark. Her uncle, dead long ago. Petyr always returned to the Starks. Always to what he had lost, what he had wanted, what he still believed the world owed him. As Petyr spoke, Sansa looked out over the clouds and felt for a moment, as if she too were floating. Untethered from the ground, from her name, from her past. Then the wind shifted, and the moon door curtains stirred, and she remembered what it meant to fall. Petyr's voice continued, smooth and steady. Robin listened, entranced. Sansa watched Petyr's mouth form words that shaped reality for the boy. He could do that to anyone, she realized. He could shape reality. And if he could shape it, then the question was no longer whether she would be trapped in his story. It was whether she could learn to write her own. Gulltown was where the Vale touched the world, and Petyr loved it for that. The docks stank of salt, tar, and fish. But beneath the stink was money. You could feel it in the creak of ship timbers, in the shouts of dockhands hauling barrels, in the way merchants' eyes measured every gesture. Petyr walked the length of the quay with a small cluster of merchants and captains, speaking softly, smiling, letting them think the conversation was casual. His boots avoided puddles without effort. His cloak was plain enough not to look like a lord showing off, expensive enough that men recognized the thread's quality. Sansa followed at a distance in a hooded cloak, her face half hidden. Petyr called her Elaine in public, and she answered to it with practiced ease. It still felt like wearing someone else's skin, but she was learning not to flinch. A merchant with a thick beard gestured toward a stack of barrels. "Grain," he said, voice cautious. "Bound for where exactly?" Petyr's smile was easy. "Where it is needed," he said. The merchant's eyes narrowed. "King's Landing?" he guessed, and the word carried suspicion. The city was a beast that ate shipments and never thanked the hand that fed it. Petyr spread his hands. "The capital is hungry," he said, as if stating a natural fact. "Hunger breeds trouble. Trouble breeds uncertainty. And uncertainty is bad for trade." A captain snorted. "Trade is bad enough already," he grumbled. "The crown delays payment. The roads are full of wolves. Pirates sniff along the coast. Petyr's eyes gleamed. Exactly, he said softly. So we offer stability. The merchant shifted, uncomfortable. The crown doesn't pay, he said. Not on time, not in full. Petyr's smile did not change. Then we don't give them charity, he said. We give them terms. He stopped near the edge of the quay where the sea slapped against wood. Fog rolled in thin ribbons. In it, ship masts looked like a forest of spears. Petyr turned slightly, letting his gaze sweep over the men beside him. If I send grain, he said, I want my name attached. I want it known in the streets that the Vale feeds the city. That Lord Arryn's protector sends bread while the crown squabbles. The merchant's brow furrowed. That's politics, he said, wary. Petyr's laugh was soft. Everything is politics, he said. Even flour. Sansa watched him barter reputation as if it were coin. She watched the merchants, skeptical at first, then slowly intrigued. Men loved profit. They loved being on the right side of a future they could smell coming. A captain scratched his beard. And what do we get? He asked. Petyr's gaze sharpened. Protection, he said simply. My protection. The Vale's protection. And payment. He tapped a pouch at his belt. The coin inside clinked softly, an intimate sound that made men lean in. You'll pay us? The merchant asked, surprised. Petyr's smile widened. Now, he said. Not later, not in promises, now. He opened the pouch slightly, letting gold glint in the fog-muted light. The crown may delay. I will not. The merchant's eyes darted to the gold, then to Petyr's face. And what do you want in return? He asked, suspicion returning. Petyr's voice stayed gentle. Loyalty, he said. Quietly. When asked, you say the Vale made this possible. When someone curses the crown for hunger, you remind them who fed them. Sansa felt a chill that had nothing to do with fog. Petyr was not buying ships. He was buying mouths. He was buying stories. As they walked again, Petyr's hand brushed Sansa's sleeve, briefly. A signal. She leaned slightly closer. You're making them dependent, she murmured. Petyr's eyes remained on the ships. I'm making them grateful, he corrected. Dependence sounds cruel. Gratitude sounds noble. Both keep you fed. Sansa's gaze drifted to the barrels of grain being rolled toward waiting ships. She imagined them arriving in King's Landing, imagined hungry hands reaching, imagined a whisper spreading through Flea Bottom. The Vale sends bread. The Vale. Petyr. The mockingbird. And if the crown stops you? She asked softly. Petyr's smile sharpened. Let them try, he said. Stopping bread makes them look like villains. Accepting bread makes them look weak. Either way, the story changes. A gull screamed overhead, harsh and lonely. Petyr watched it circle, then disappear into fog. Sansa thought of the Iron Throne, heavy and jagged, built from swords. She thought of a man in a mountain castle writing letters that tightened a bank's grip in a city's hunger. She thought of grain barrels and whispered gratitude. Power, she realized, could be quieter than she'd ever imagined. It could smell like bread. The day of Tyrion's trial by combat smelled of sweat and dust and old violence. They built the arena in the Red Keep's yard where men could gather and watch blood spill as entertainment and judgment. The sun beat down hard, turning armor into ovens. The crowd roared with anticipation, hungry for a spectacle that would make them forget empty bread stalls and angry septons. Tyrion stood on a balcony above the yard, chains on his wrists, face set in defiance so brittle it might crack. He stared down at the fighters with a kind of exhausted fury. If the gods existed, they were cruel ones. Cersei watched from a shaded platform, her expression tight with satisfaction that looked almost like joy. This was her justice, dressed in law. Gregor Clegane stood in the arena like a walking fortress. His armor was massive, dark and scarred. The mountain's helm hid his face, but his presence alone made the air feel heavier. He held a greatsword as if it were a toy. Across from him stood Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper of Dorne. He wore light armor, red and gold, his spear held loosely as if he were strolling through a garden rather than facing death. His smile was bright and sharp and far too pleased. When the combat began, Oberyn danced. He moved around Gregor like a flame around a log, quick steps, sudden jabs. His spear flashed, striking armor plates, searching for gaps. The crowd screamed, half delighted, half horrified. Gregor swung his sword in heavy arcs that cut air and kicked up sand, each swing strong enough to break bones if it landed. Oberyn's laughter carried up to the balcony. "Say her name," he taunted, voice clear. "Say Elia. Say it." "No." The word sent a ripple through the crowd. Some knew, some didn't, but all could taste the old grievance in the air. Tyrion's eyes widened, understanding dawning. This wasn't merely a fight. It was a confession being dragged out with steel. Gregor stumbled as Oberyn's spear slipped under a joint in his armor, drawing blood. The mountain roared, a sound like a beast. The crowd howled approval. Cersei's hands clenched on the railing, knuckles white. Oberyn pressed his advantage, circling, spear striking again and again. Gregor's movements grew clumsier. Blood ran down one leg, dark and thick. He began to wobble, the fortress cracking. For a moment, it seemed as if the gods might surprise everyone. Gregor fell to one knee, the impact shaking dust loose from stones. Oberyn stepped back, breathing fast, grin bright. He pointed his spear at Gregor's face. "Say it," he demanded, voice trembling with fury beneath the smile. "Say you raped her. Say you murdered her. Say you murdered her children, Tonchol." The arena held its breath. Gregor's helm tilted, and through the slit, a shadow of eyes glinted. He growled something, words maybe, or just the sound of rage. Oberyn leaned closer, too close. His need for confession was a hunger he could not control. And hunger, Sansa had learned, was dangerous. Gregor moved with sudden, brutal speed. He lunged, grabbing Oberyn's leg, yanking. Oberyn fell, sand exploding around him. His spear clattered away. In an instant, Gregor was on him, crushing him beneath armored weight. The crowd screamed. Oberyn tried to scramble, but Gregor's hands closed around his head like a man closing around a melon. Oberyn shouted, struggling, spitting curses. Gregor's voice boomed, low and monstrous. "I killed her," he growled. "I raped her. I murdered her children." The confession came, but it came with horror. Gregor's hands tightened. The sound that followed was wet and final. The crowd's roar turned into a kind of stunned silence, then erupted again, half in shock, half in sick delight. Tyrion's face went gray. Cersei's mouth curved into a smile that looked like relief and triumph tangled together. Justice had been done, the court would say, but the realm would feel something else. The Martell's grief turning into rage, the faith's outrage sharpening, the people's hunger finding new fuel. In the Vale, Petyr Baelish would hear the news and see not tragedy, not spectacle, but opportunity. Another wound in the realm. Another reason for men to whisper that the crown was cursed. Another rung on the ladder. News traveled slower to Dorne than it did to King's Landing, but it traveled with sharper edges. In Sunspear, the air was warm even in the evening, carrying the scent of oranges and salt from the sea. The palace was built to breathe, its stone halls cool, its arches open to courtyards where water trickled in thin streams. Dorne Martell sat in his chair, the letter open in his hands. His face was composed, but his eyes were heavy, as if he had been carrying grief for so long it had become part of his bones. Ellaria Sand stood nearby, posture rigid. Her fingers curled into fists she did not unclench. Her eyes were dark with fury that wanted to spill. "He's dead," she said, voice low and shaking. "They killed him." Doran's fingers tightened on the parchment. "Yes," he said softly. Ellaria's laugh was bitter. They called it justice, she spat. Justice. They let the mountain crush his head like fruit, and they call it justice. Doran's gaze remained steady. Oberyn chose the fight, he said, and there was no blame in it, only weary truth. Ellaria's eyes flashed. Chose it because you wouldn't, she hissed. The words hung in the cool air like a blade. Doran did not flinch. He had been accused of caution his whole life, as if caution were cowardice rather than strategy. He set the letter down carefully. We will mourn, he said, and we will remember. Ellaria stepped closer, anger trembling through her. Remember? She demanded. Remembering doesn't bring him back. Remembering doesn't punish them. Cersei sits in her castle and smiles while my daughters. Her voice cracked. While his daughters. Doran's eyes softened, and for a moment the mask slipped, showing the grief beneath. I loved my brother, he said quietly. Do you think I do not burn? Ellaria stared, breathing hard. Then she looked away, because his pain made her own harder to hold. A guard entered, bowed, and handed Doran another letter. The seal was unfamiliar. No sunspear, no lion, no rose. A mockingbird. Doran's eyes narrowed slightly. He broke the seal, read. His expression did not change, but something in the air shifted. Ellaria watched him. Who? She asked. Doran held the parchment up slightly. Petyr Baelish, he said. Ellaria frowned. Littlefinger, she said with contempt. What does he want? Doran read silently for a moment longer. The letter was polite, carefully sympathetic about Oberyn's death, about the injustice of the court, about the fragility of peace. It offered nothing explicit. It suggested, gently, that Dorne might soon have reason to consider its position in the realm. It suggested that the Iron Throne was weaker than it pretended. Ellaria's eyes narrowed. He wants to use us, she said. Doran's lips curved faintly. Everyone wants to use Dorne, he said. We are useful. Ellaria's jaw clenched. Will you let him? Doran set the letter down. I will listen, he said. Listening costs nothing. Acting costs blood. Ellaria's hands trembled. Blood has already been spilled. Doran's gaze lifted to the courtyard beyond the archway where orange trees swayed gently. Yes, he said softly. And more will be spilled before this ends. He looked back at the mockingbird seal, thoughtful. Petyr Baelish was not a man of banners. He did not ride at the head of armies. Yet his letters reached Sunspear as easily as ravens reached the wall. He moved through the realm in whispers, in offers that looked like sympathy and smelled like opportunity. Doran folded the letter carefully. Tell the guards, he said to the man, to watch the sea and send word to our friends, quietly. Ellaria's eyes flashed. Friends, she echoed. Doran's voice was calm, but there was iron beneath it. The realm is changing, he said. If we are to survive it, we must know who is shaping it. Somewhere in the Vale, Petyr Baelish was shaping. And in Dorne, a prince who had waited too long began, at last, to watch. The lesson came on a night when rain lashed the windows, and the wind sounded like distant wolves. Sansa sat at the table in Petyr's solar, the map of Westeros spread between them. She had seen maps before, pretty things in Winterfell, educational, harmless. This map was marked with small stones and bits of wax, little symbols of armies and houses and roads. It looked less like geography and more like a wound. Petyr leaned over it, candlelight throwing shadows across his face, making him look older and more dangerous. His finger tapped King's Landing. The capital is a mouth, he said softly. Always hungry, always demanding. Sansa's gaze stayed on the map. And you feed it, she said. Petyr smiled. Sometimes, he said. Sometimes I let it starve. Hunger makes men noisy. Noisy men are predictable. Sansa's fingers traced the riverlands, the place where her family had been swallowed. They'll blame the crown, she said. Petyr's eyes gleamed. Yes, he said. And when they blame the crown, they begin to imagine alternatives. Sansa looked up at him. You're doing all this to punish them, she asked, because she needed to believe cruelty had a reason beyond appetite. Petyr's smile faded into something thoughtful. Punishment is for moral men, he said. I'm not moral, I'm practical. Sansa's throat tightened. Then why? She asked, and her voice shook despite her effort. Petyr's gaze held hers. In it, there was no warmth. Not truly, but there was honesty of a kind. Because I was born with nothing, he said softly. Because men laughed at me in halls like this and assumed I would always be grateful for scraps. He tapped the map again, harder. Because they built a world where blood decides everything, and I refuse to accept that. Sansa stared at him, rain muttering against glass. So you'll build a different world, she said quietly. Petyr's smile returned, small and sharp. I will, he said. Sansa's hands clenched. And where do I fit? She asked, because she was tired of being moved like a piece without being told the rules. Petyr's gaze flicked to the north on the map, to Winterfell, to the place her heart still insisted was home. You, he said softly, are something the realm remembers. They remember the Starks. They remember wolves. His eyes returned to her face. Even broken wolves. The words stung, but they were not wrong. Sansa's voice went colder. You want me as a banner, she said. Petyr nodded, unoffended. Among other things, he said. A banner, a claim, a symbol of legitimacy, a key. Sansa's breath came out slowly. And you, she said, are what? The hand holding the key. Petyr laughed softly, pleased. You're learning, he said. Yes, I hold the key, for now. Sansa's gaze dropped back to the map. Her fingers moved to the Vale, to the Eyrie, to the mountains that made them feel safe. You have 6 moons, she murmured, thinking of Jan Royce's hard voice. After that, they can cast you out. Petyr's smile sharpened. If they can, he said. Sansa looked up, startled. What do you mean? Petyr's finger moved from the Vale to Gulltown, then to King's Landing. By then, he said softly, the Vale will be tied to the capital by bread and coin. Merchants will owe me. Lords will owe me. And Robin, he tapped the Eyrie, will not want me to leave. Sansa's stomach tightened. You're making the Vale dependent on you, she said. Petyr's eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction. I'm making them comfortable, he corrected. Comfort is the strongest chain. Sansa's face heated with anger. You killed Lysa, she said suddenly, the words bursting out. They had been sitting like a stone in her chest for too long. You killed her, and you called it a story. Petyr's smile did not falter. He regarded her calmly, like a teacher watching a student finally ask the real question. Yes, he said. Sansa's hands shook. How can you say it so easily? She demanded. Petyr's voice stayed gentle. Because it was necessary, he said. Because she would have dragged us both through that door eventually, whether with her hands or with her madness. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. And because you're alive. Sansa's breath hitched, and she hated that he was right. She hated the way he made survival feel like debt. Petyr straightened, smoothing his sleeves. If you want to be safe, he said, you have to understand what safety costs. Sansa's eyes stung, but she did not look away. And what does a crown cost? She asked, and the question surprised her as much as it surprised him. Petyr's gaze sharpened, pleased. A crown, he said softly, costs everything you are afraid to spend. Sansa swallowed. And you're not afraid, she said. Petyr's smile returned, bright and dangerous. Oh, he said, I'm afraid. I'm afraid every day. He leaned over the map and placed a small black stone on King's Landing. But fear, he murmured, is not A chain. It's a ladder. No. Sansa stared at the stone on the capital, at the rain-darkened window, at the candlelight trembling between them. She did not know if she was climbing with him or simply being carried, but for the first time, she understood the shape of the ladder. The realm's edge was colder than any southern lord wanted to admit. At the wall, the wind never tired. It knifed through fur and leather and found skin beneath. Snow dusted the stone in thin, spiteful layers. Torches burned low, their flames bent by gusts. Stannis Baratheon stood on the battlements like a statue carved from stubbornness. His jaw was set, his eyes hard, his armor dark as a bruise. He looked out over the frozen expanse beyond the wall with a man's certainty that duty did not care whether men believed in it. Davos Seaworth stood beside him, cloak pulled tight, fingers stiff with cold. He held a raven scroll, the wax seal broken. "More southern news," Davos said, voice rough. Stannis did not look at him. "The south can rot," he said flatly. Davos hesitated. "This concerns coin," he said. "And bread." Stannis' mouth tightened. "Coin," he repeated, as if the word tasted foul. "They always come back to coin." Davos held out the scroll. Stannis took it and read, eyes moving quickly. His expression did not change, but something in his gaze sharpened. "The Iron Bank tightens," he murmured. "King's Landing bleeds." Davos nodded. "So it seems." Stannis' eyes narrowed. "This is not an accident," he said. Davos swallowed. "No," he agreed. "Someone is pulling strings." Stannis' gaze lifted, distant, as if looking beyond the wall and beyond the realm itself. "Littlefinger," he said, and the name was not spoken with fear, but with contempt. A man with no sword and too many whispers. Davos frowned. "He's in the Vale," he said slowly. "Or so the tales say." Stannis' mouth twisted. "The Vale," he said, almost spitting. "A nest of cowards sitting on untouched grain while the realm burns." Davos shifted his weight, boots crunching in snow. "If the capital starves," he said carefully, "it could weaken the Lannisters. It could make the realm desperate," Stannis interrupted. "Desperation breeds betrayal. Betrayal breeds chaos." Davos looked out over the frozen dark. The world beyond the wall felt honest compared to the South's politicking. Here, men died because of cold and steel, not because of letters and ledgers. "And chaos," Stannis continued, voice low, "breeds claimants." Davos' brow furrowed. "Claimants?" he asked. Stannis turned, eyes hard. "If the realm is weak," he said, "every rat will think itself a lion." Davos hesitated. "You're thinking of Baelish," he said. Stannis' gaze was cold. "Baelish wants power," he said. "He always has. And he is the sort of man who would let the realm starve if it brought him closer to a crown." Davos' stomach tightened. He had seen hungry men. He had been one. Hunger made men do terrible things. "If he does," Davos said quietly, "then he is an enemy as real as any sword." Stannis' mouth tightened. "He is," he agreed, "but he is far, and my war is here." A horn blew somewhere along the wall, long and mournful. Black cloaks moved, shapes in the torchlight. Beyond the battlements, the wilderness waited, vast and indifferent. Stannis stared south for a moment, as if he could see through stone and distance to the Iron Throne he believed was his by right. Then his gaze returned north, because duty demanded it. In the Vale, Petyr Baelish was pulling threads that tightened around King's Landing's throat. At the wall, Stannis Baratheon felt the realm shifting and knew with grim certainty that when the South finally collapsed into chaos, it would not be a clean fall. And in that fall, men like Petyr Baelish would try to climb. Tywin Lannister died the way he lived, in a place built for his convenience, believing himself untouchable. The Hand's chambers were quiet in the early hours, the kind of quiet that settled after too much grief and too many plotted meetings. Torches guttered in sconces, casting uncertain light on tapestries and carved wood. The air smelled faintly of perfume and old smoke. Tyrion moved through the room like a ghost, the crossbow heavy in his hands. His eyes were bloodshot, his face drawn tight with rage and exhaustion. He had been sprung from his cell like an animal released from a trap, guided through hidden passages by Varys' soft voice and careful hands. "This way," Varys had whispered. Quietly, Tyrion's mind had been a storm of betrayal and hurt. Jaime's confession, about Tysha, about lies that had broken him, still burned like acid. There were wounds older than Joffrey's death. He found Shay first. The sight of her in Tywin's bed was a cruelty too neat to be accidental. The fight was brief, ugly, and silent. When it was over, Tyrion stood shaking, a chain of grief and rage tightening around his throat. Then he found his father. Tywin sat on the privy as if even there he were on a throne, his robes bunched around him, his face rigid with fury and disbelief. In the torchlight, his eyes looked almost black. "You," Tywin said, voice thick with contempt. "You little..." Tyrion raised the crossbow. His hands did not tremble now. Something in him had gone cold. "I am your son," he said, voice raw. "And you?" His throat tightened. "You were supposed to protect us." Tywin's laugh was harsh. "Protect?" he sneered. "From what? From consequence? You have brought nothing but shame." The first bolt struck him in the chest. Tywin's breath exploded out of him. His eyes widened, shocked more by the audacity than the pain. He tried to stand. Tyrion fired again. The second bolt drove Tywin backward. His body slumped, heavy and awkward, against the privy wall. The great lord who had ruled the realm with cold certainty slid down, blood soaking into fine cloth, into wood, into stone. Tywin's mouth moved, trying to form words. His eyes fixed on Tyrion with hatred that was almost paternal in its familiarity. Tyrion stared back, breath coming fast, and felt nothing like triumph. Only a kind of numb finality, as if he had cut a rope that had been strangling him for years. Behind him, footsteps whispered. Varys appeared in the doorway like a shadow given shape. His face was not shocked. It was sad. "It is time," Varys murmured. Tyrion's gaze stayed on Tywin's corpse. "Is it?" he asked, voice hollow. Varys' eyes flicked toward the corridor beyond. "The castle will wake soon," he said, "and your sister will not be gentle." As if summoned by the words, a scream echoed through the tower, a sound of pure fury and grief. Cersei had found him, or someone had found her. Tyrion's hands tightened on the crossbow. For a heartbeat, he considered staying, facing it, dying in the ashes of his own family. Varys touched his arm lightly. "Come," he whispered. "There is still work to do in the world." Tyrion laughed, bitter. "Work," he echoed. "For who? For what?" Varys' gaze was steady. "For the realm," he said softly. "It deserves better than this." Tyrion's eyes burned. "Does it?" he asked. "Or does it deserve exactly what it gets?" Varys did not answer. He simply guided Tyrion into the hidden passage, into darkness that smelled of dust and old secrets. Behind them, the Hand's Tower erupted into noise, guards shouting, doors slamming, Cersei's fury ripping through corridors like fire. Tywin Lannister's death would change everything. It would weaken the crown. It would fracture alliances. It would send ripples through every lord's hall. And far away in the Vale, Petyr Baelish would feel those ripples like a fisherman feeling a tug on a line. The raven arrived at dusk, its wings slick with snow. Winter had begun to show its teeth in the Vale. The mountains wore white caps now, and the wind carried a bite that made men pull cloaks tighter and speak less. In the hall at the Gates of the Moon, a fire burned bright in the hearth, crackling like restrained anger. Petyr accepted the scroll without ceremony. His fingers were steady. The wax seal was Lannister red. Sansa stood nearby, hands folded, watching his face the way she had learned to watch the sky for storms. Robin clung to Petyr's leg, bored and fidgeting, demanding attention with small, irritated noises. Lothar Brune stood by the door, silent as a post. Jon Royce lingered at the edge of the hall with two other lords, their conversation quiet. Their eyes followed the raven scroll like hungry dogs watching meat. Petyr broke the seal and read. For a heartbeat, his expression did not change. Then, just the smallest shift. The corners of his mouth lifted, not into a smile, not openly, but into something like satisfaction. Sansa's pulse quickened. "What is it?" she asked softly. Petyr folded the parchment with careful precision, then tucked it into his sleeve as if it were merely another expense report. He looked down at Robin and smoothed the boy's hair. "News from King's Landing," he said lightly. Robin's eyes widened. "Is it about Tommen?" he asked. Because Robin liked other boys in stories. Boys he could imagine being like him, weak but crowned. Petyr's smile softened. "It is about Tommen," he said. "And it is about his grandfather." Robin frowned. "Tywin," he said, stumbling over the name as if it were too heavy. Petyr's eyes gleamed. "Yes," he said. "Tywin is dead." The hall went still. Even the fire seemed to pause, crackling quieter, as if listening. Jon Royce's head snapped up. "Dead?" he echoed, skepticism sharp. "How?" Petyr's voice remained mild. "Murdered," he said. "In his own tower." A murmur ran through the lords like wind through dry leaves. Tywin Lannister was not supposed to be murdered. Men like Tywin did not die quietly. They were pillars. They were inevitabilities. Sansa felt cold bloom in her chest. She thought of the small council chamber, of Tywin's hard eyes, of the way he had spoken as if he could force the realm into obedience by will alone. He was gone. "What does it mean?" one of the lords asked, voice low. Petyr's smile was gentle, almost sympathetic. "It means," he said, "that the lion is leaderless." Jon's gaze narrowed. "And the realm?" he demanded. Petyr's eyes flicked to him, calm. "The realm will pretend to be stable," he said. "For a time. Cersei will cling to power. The Tyrells will smile and sharpen their knives. The faith will preach. The small folk will starve." He spread his hands slightly, as if showing a simple equation. "And then it will break." Robin pressed closer to Petyr, suddenly anxious. "Will they come here?" he asked, voice small. "Will they take my castle?" Petyr crouched, gathering Robin close with one arm. "No one will take your castle," he murmured soothingly. "Not unless you let them." Robin sniffed, comforted by the familiar promise. Sansa watched Petyr's face and saw it. The tension beneath the calm, the excitement beneath the restraint. A predator smelling fresh blood. "You wanted this," Sansa whispered, too quietly for the lords to hear. Petyr's gaze slid to her, amused. "Want is a childish word," he murmured. "I prepared for it." Sansa's throat tightened. "You tightened the bank's grip," she said, voice low. "You sent grain. You sent letters. You—" Petyr's smile sharpened, and for a moment she saw the man beneath the courtier, the boy from the Fingers who had looked up at great lords and decided he would never look up again. "I arranged the board," he whispered, "and now pieces are falling into place." Jon Royce stepped closer, suspicion thick on his face. "If the realm breaks," he said, "it will drag everyone with it." Petyr rose smoothly, Robin still clinging to him. "Not everyone," he said softly. He walked toward the hearth, letting the firelight warm his face. He held his hands out toward the flames as if enjoying heat, but Sansa knew he enjoyed the moment more. "War is a ladder," he murmured. Not to the lords, not even to her. Almost to himself, as if repeating a prayer. "And the higher you climb, the more you see." Sansa's stomach churned. "And what do you see?" she asked. Petyr turned his head slightly. His eyes met hers, bright and intent. In them she saw the outline of a crown, not on his head yet, but in his imagination, solid as iron. "I see men who will beg for stability," he said softly. "I see lords who will trade pride for peace. I see a capital that will need a savior." He glanced toward Jon Royce and the other lords, his smile polite again. "My lords," he said, voice warm, "the realm will look to the Vale soon. We have been fortunate. We have been spared." He let the words settle, then added, "It would be a shame to waste that fortune." Jon's gaze was hard. "What are you suggesting?" he demanded. Petyr's smile widened, gentle as a lullaby. "Nothing rash," he said. "Nothing foolish, only preparation." He gestured toward the windows where snow drifted down, soft and relentless. "Winter is coming, and winter makes men honest." Sansa watched the snow and felt the truth of it. Winter stripped away pretense. It forced choices. Petyr Baelish had been stripping away pretense for years. As the lords murmured among themselves, uneasy and intrigued, Petyr leaned closer to Sansa. His voice dropped to something only she could hear. "The crown is emptying," he whispered. "And when a cup empties, it can be filled." Sansa's fingers curled into her palms. She looked at the lords, at Robin's pale face, at the firelight on Petyr's cheekbones, and felt the weight of the story he was writing settle over them all. Somewhere far away, King's Landing was tearing itself apart in grief and rage. Here, in the Vale, Petyr Baelish stood beside a boy lord and a girl with a stolen name, and smiled as if he could already feel the iron beneath his fingers. The ladder had shaken. Now it would rise.